My name is Gina. Standing in the hospital waiting room, I can still feel the tremors in my hands from the adrenaline rush. The room had been filled with the sounds of panic and chaos just moments ago, but now, it's as if all the noise has been sucked out of the air. Dr. Reyes, the ER chief and my supervisor, stands in front of me, clipboard in hand, his face a mask of pure confusion. Dr. Jenkins? I didn't know you'd be in today, he says, glancing down at the chart before looking back up at me. His eyes then move to my nephew, Max, on the stretcher, to his mother, Lily's tear-streaked face, and to my mother, standing frozen beside me. Understanding dawns on his face. Wait, is this your family? Are you the one who got him breathing again? My mother's head snaps towards me so fast I can almost hear her neck crack. Her mouth opens slightly, but no words come out. My brother, Ryan, who just walked through the doors behind us, stops mid-step, staring at me like he's seeing me for the first time in his life. Lily looks between me and Dr. Reyes, the confusion in her eyes slowly giving way to something that looks almost like shame. I take a deep breath and reply, my voice steady and professional, yes. Witness submersion, approximately 90 seconds of unresponsiveness. I performed rescue breaths and compressions until spontaneous respiration. I want him evaluated for any secondary complications. Dr. Reyes nods and calls over a resident to get Max into an exam room for monitoring. Before he walks off, he turns back to me and says, honestly, Gina, this doesn't surprise me one bit. You're one of the best codes I've ever watched run a resuscitation. Whatever they're paying you isn't enough. Then he claps a hand briefly on my shoulder and disappears down the hallway with the team wheeling Max away. For a long moment, nobody in my family says a word. My mother's face goes through a series of expressions, from confusion to disbelief to what looks uncomfortably close to embarrassment. It's Lily who finally breaks the silence. He called you doctor. He said you run resuscitations. Gina, I thought you were a nurse. I take a deep breath and say quietly, I'm an ER physician. I've been one for 6 years. I went to medical school, did my residency, and passed my boards. I'm not sure how that got lost along the way, but it did. My mother finally finds her voice, but it comes out smaller than I've ever heard it. I just always called it nursing because, I don't know, Gina. I never really understood the difference. I didn't mean anything by it. I could have let it slide, as I always had before. But watching Max lying motionless on the sand, counting compressions on his small chest while my family stood there, helpless, had burned away whatever patience I had left. You've known the difference for 6 years, Mom. You came to my white coat ceremony. You have a photo of me in my graduation gown on your refrigerator. This wasn't confusion. It was easier for you to call it playing nurse than to admit your daughter became a doctor without your help, without your encouragement, and honestly, without much support from this family at all. Ryan is the next to speak. She's right, he says quietly, looking at our mother and then at me. Gina, I'm sorry. I've made jokes about it for years, and I never once thought about what it actually meant. You just saved my son's life on a beach with your bare hands, and the first thing we did was make sure everyone at that party knew you were the babysitter. His voice cracks slightly, and for the first time in as long as I can remember, my brother looks at me with respect. Lily reaches for my hand, her grip tight, grateful, and still shaking from the adrenaline. Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there. I don't know what we would have done. I didn't need the apology to feel vindicated. I've spent years building a career that matters, saving lives in a department most people only see in their worst moments. That truth doesn't depend on whether my family acknowledges it at a lake party or in a hospital waiting room. But hearing them finally say it out loud, watching my mother's face crumble under the weight of years of careless words, does something to loosen a knot in my chest that I didn't realize was still so tight. Let me rewind to how we got here. I've been working as an emergency room physician at City General Hospital for 6 years. But to my family, I've never been Dr. Gina. I'm the girl who plays nurse for a living. My mother is a traditional woman. She's always had a certain image of what her children should be. Ryan, my older brother, is her golden child. He works in finance, makes a six-figure salary, and is married to Lily, a beautiful and well-mannered woman who fits perfectly into my mother's idea of a daughter-in-law. They have a 5-year-old son, Max, who is the light of my life. Every family gathering, whether it's a holiday dinner or a birthday party, when someone asks what I do for work, my mother would say, "Oh, Gina plays nurse over at the hospital." She'd laugh as if it's the funniest joke in the world, and my father would just nod along. Ryan would smirk into his drink, and I'd sit there, biting my tongue, knowing that correcting them would only make things worse. They know the truth. They've seen my white coat hanging in my apartment. They've seen my medical school diploma on my wall. They know I spent 4 years in undergrad, 4 more in med school, and 3 grueling years in residency before I became an attending physician. But in their eyes, I'm still the same clumsy teenager who used to faint at the sight of blood. One summer, Ryan decided to throw a big lake party to celebrate Max's birthday. He rented a beautiful house on Lake Willow, a property with a private dock, a large deck, and enough space to host 30 people comfortably. My parents flew in from Florida, and Lily's family came up from Texas. I almost didn't go. After a long stretch of overnight shifts, the thought of driving 4 hours for a weekend where I'd be the butt of the family's jokes again was exhausting. But Max called me himself, his little voice insisting that the party wasn't a party without Aunt Gina. How could I say no? The first day of the party went exactly as I expected. My mother introduced me to Lily's relatives with the same old line. A woman I'd never met before tilted her head and asked if I liked taking blood pressure. I just smiled and said it was rewarding work. Explaining the truth to strangers who'd already been told a lie felt like shouting into a void. By the second afternoon, most of the adults were on the deck, sipping their drinks, while the kids were playing by the water under what was supposed to be careful supervision. I was sitting at a picnic table, scrolling through a text from my charge nurse about Monday's schedule, when I heard that eerie silence that always precedes a disaster. Then came a scream, Lily's scream. Before I even knew what I was doing, I was on my feet and running towards the water. Max had been playing on an inflatable near the dock with 2 other kids. In a matter of seconds, he'd slipped off the edge and into the deeper water. By the time I reached the shoreline, another guest had already pulled him out, but Max wasn't breathing. His lips were turning blue, and his small body was limp on the sand. Lily was screaming his name, shaking him as if that could bring him back. All the noise of the party, the panic, the horrified faces of the relatives, it all faded away. I dropped to my knees beside Max, tilted his chin, checked his airway, and began rescue breaths, counting compressions under my breath just like I'd done hundreds of times before. But this time, it was Max's small chest under my hands, not a stranger's on a hospital bed. I heard someone shouting for an ambulance in the background, but I didn't look up. I focused on the rhythm, on the count, on the boy in front of me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity but was probably less than 90 seconds, Max coughed, fluttered his eyes, and took in a ragged breath. The ambulance arrived 12 minutes later. By then, Max was conscious, crying, and clinging to his mother. His color was slowly returning. The paramedics loaded him onto a stretcher for a precautionary trip to the hospital. Naturally, I climbed into my car to follow behind, my hands still shaking. My mother rode with Ryan and Lily in their car. As we pulled into the hospital parking lot, I overheard her on the phone with my aunt, already rewriting what had happened. Gina was there, thank God. Lucky our babysitter knew a little CPR. I didn't correct her. I was too focused on getting inside and making sure Max was okay. Now, here we are in the hospital waiting room, and everything has changed. Max was discharged later that evening, perfectly fine, already asking if he could have ice cream for being so brave. My mother hugged me longer than she had in years before we left. I knew old habits wouldn't disappear overnight, but something had shifted. At the next family dinner, when my aunt asked what I did for a living, I watched my mother answer before I even opened my mouth. "She's an emergency room doctor," she said, and for once, there was no laughter, no joke, just quiet, simple pride.